Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Rob, thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick. It's really exciting to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here with you, Jason.
Yeah, I know you're an avid fan of the podcast. Probably listen to every episode, right?
Absolutely. And going forward, I will listen to everyone.
That's great.
Yes.
It's really great to get someone of your caliber. You work with Marsh. You are a director of the global construction space. Whenever we get someone of your stature on the podcast, I just like to know, how did you end up here? Because most people don't grow up going, hey, this is what I'm going to do.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So how did you end up in this role?
Well, sometimes I think more people, do specialize in insurance. I did not. Get into the insurance business right out of school. Learned about the surety world. So I worked for an investment bank through college, but was very interested in both construction and the credit side of insurance. So that's how I got into the business. And then leading our construction practice, I've been at Marsh just about 8 years now. So it's been great. We've got a great team and, many different interesting things.
One interesting thing that I really love about the construction industry is people said, oh, it's not really evolving. Then suddenly there's a mass involvement in technologies and practices and the resources they hire all across the board. And the pandemic had a lot to do with that. In 8 years, what have you really seen change from when you started to now?
Yeah, look, construction is a very sophisticated business, right? I think a couple things, right? Protecting balance sheets and protecting people. I think leading construction companies will continue to bet on themselves. And how do we use technologies to have safer jobs and have more profitable jobs? I mean, that is one of the things that I've seen the most evolution of. And also construction companies are interested in investing in technology, right? Some of the most successful construction companies are making investments into construction technologies.
How risky are you in your personal life? Are you a risk taker or are you not a risk taker?
I think what I like to do is take measured risks. So both personally and professionally, I do think the concept of betting on yourself and having confidence in what you believe, I do think there are great strategic risks you can take in your professional career. I've certainly done that in the past and will continue to do that. In my personal life, I like to take measured risks. I've got 3 kids. It can be risky, but I like to, take measured risks.
When we think about risk appetite, and you're probably working with many construction companies, helping them develop what that risk appetite is. And also, if they don't take risks, they're not going to be in business, right? Do you have a way you help direct, or what is your thought process when you're going in and talking to a new organization that you're working with?
So, look, we use a lot of tools and, you're sitting in the Marsh Cafe and there are a lot of things we're talking to our clients about this week, really about helping make informed risk decisions, right? We talk about things like risk finance optimization, risk bearing capacity. We've got a group in here today talking about, supply chain and how that can impact risk. I think we want to understand each client has different risk bearing capabilities, right? Some can be financial and others could just be philosophical, how they're thinking about risk.
I was walking past, I think you guys were doing a lecture or something in this room, and it was about climate change and the effect of that in the construction industry. There's a lot of people who have been on the podcast talking about that and trying to foresee the future because you have liabilities, financial liabilities for the building 30 years from now if it suddenly tips over, all these kind of things, cyber, all of the stuff going into it. What are some of and you talked about them, but I just want to double click on that. Every risk manager I talk to is like, I'm trying to get my hands around a whole new world. And they're happy because they've been elevated to now the C-level. They have lots of interactions with the COO, the chief financial officer, those kind of people. But I think it's been hard for them to adjust to this new world of risk. What are some of the ones that you are really honing in on? And I think the financial thing would be something interesting to go into.
Yeah, well, so I would say, as you think about financial risks, some are insured risks. There are other risks that are simply business risks. So, as we look at the most complex construction projects, we try to develop what's called a risk register. And we try to delineate what can you insure or transfer, what can you absorb. And really the big dynamic for construction risk managers is allocation of risk. So we think about the most complex construction projects and where should that risk sit this notion in the past that owners would push these risks down to the contractors and lower tier contractors. It doesn't work. Where we are when we think about the limits of construction projects and proper risk allocation.
Right, yeah, right.
So those are a couple things we're thinking about and talking to our clients about.
There are some insurance companies who talk about or brokerages that say, you should put everything in your contract and make it really hard. But then sometimes you can't actually do business like that because some of your subcontractors and things you're talking about can't even get the right insurance that's necessary. So you have to take on some of that risk. And what we found is that a lot of people just waive those risks and never even really understand what that registry actually looks like for them.
You can't be in business. Honestly, if you don't understand that risk, you're going to find yourself in a really bad place.
Yeah.
So we really try to talk to our clients and all of those stakeholders around transparency. You talk, Jason, about what we're starting to see and what I've seen in this leadership role is the notion of transparency, especially for some of the largest, what Marsh, we're privileged to be on the largest infrastructure projects in the world,
right,
in the US. That idea of transparency around those risks and proper allocation is more prevalent now than ever.
I'm seeing that even that transparency is getting into the bid process and
100%.
Everywhere across the board. It can be real value differentiator for organizations.
100%. And I'm sure you're familiar with progressive design build. And really, as you think about what can I build for a certain price and how can I build it, right? So that is certainly something we're going to see more of.
When you're thinking about construction in America, is that changing? Is it the same around the world, or how have you seen the different geographies kind of develop?
I think we're lucky to be in the US for any number of reasons, but as we think about construction, a lot of people want to build in the US. So, we think about all the infrastructure stimulus money that's come forth, the onshore of whether it's EV plants, whether it's chips. So many projects are coming into the US of great size and scope. So that is a great opportunity for us in the US. And I think that's going to continue for the next few years for sure.
There's a whole in the news talking about the changing of cities after COVID, people working from home, that construction. I mean, have you started to see new types of construction go into places and cities? Is that already hitting you, or is that still a big unknown?
That's a good question. I mean, we talk about urbanization and deurbanization. I don't know that I've seen that type of construction. I would tell you, I live in New York, and so I would tell you the commercial construction business has slowed down in cities like New York. I mean, we definitely—
San Francisco,
San Fran's another great example, right? So I do think we're going to need to reimagine some of those structures. There's been a lot of talk around commercial to residential conversion. There's a lot of things between that need to take place as you think about office footprints and many other interests. But I do think those types of construction will be interesting to see how that
that's what I'm really interested in. I'm wondering if it's going to be your traditional construction companies that take on that work, or if we're going to see a new emergent construction company that's converting all of those things. We kind of saw that with the green movement and other things like that. New construction companies coming up, and then old ones trying to take that on.
Well, I mean, you've kind of reimagined what that construction company would look like. There's certainly an idea of life cycle, right? Could you have a property owner look to do the construction and then hold it for a period of time? We saw that on things like student housing. So on P3 projects. It's hard to say, Jason. But it's something we're watching closely for sure.
What would you say, this is an InsurTech question people get, and how has InsurTech really helped the underwriting process? A lot of people want to understand. I think that everyone's talking 5 years ago about collecting data, and now we have all this data and we don't know what to do with it. So what are you seeing that some innovative companies are being able to do with their data stack and other things like that?
It's an evolving issue, but I mean, I think using the data to learn from the data, but also represent yourself is very important. And we spend a lot of time with our clients, especially on claims data. Where are they having issues? Is it a certain geography? Is it a certain trade? Is it a certain specialty trade where we're having these issues? Those are things that we're going to continue to look at to, again, help our clients make good risk decisions, right? I mean, I think about on the submission side, the more we can show that we understand the risk and make our loss prevention stand out by using the data, I think is going to continue to be helpful for our clients.
I think one thing that I think about the data that's it's like being able to pull that out for risk managers to actually utilize and find segments. Like one big thing that we found in data was certain crafts, like a lot of the people had retired, didn't come back after COVID. Younger, more novice people are doing those jobs who are not trained, and that's causing a lot of claims and other things like that. And it's just interesting because I think without some of these tools, people would have not figured that out for some higher duration of time than people started seeing.
100%. So, you hit on something really important there because, one of the biggest issues we face is a labor shortage. We've found that, when you have a labor shortage, you have somebody coming onto the site who is much less experienced. And the data shows when you're less experienced, you tend to not be as safe or you don't know what you're doing. So we're definitely seeing those correlations. I don't know how you solve that in the short term.
I wonder if companies like Marsh are starting to help with education programs and things like that in order to try to stimulate that part of it.
I would tell you our advisory business is something we're going to continue to lead with.
Yeah.
Right? That is very important. One of the first things we talk about is, hey, how can we help you strategically bet on yourself, but then how can we bring you the tools to be safer? That's first and foremost. You look at every leading contractor, mission statement, safety of the employees, without question, the most important thing, and it's embedded in the culture.
That made me think of one other thing, which is there seems to be some trend in construction right now where a lot of companies are moving away from subcontractors or narrowing their subcontractor focus to, let's say, we only want to work with our top 20%, 100% of the time, right? Is that aligning what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, clearly you want to do business personally and professionally with people you like, and you trust. And increasingly on the construction side, we are seeing strategic partners. Owners want to partner with contractors who they know can build something on time and on budget. And they're willing to pay, in some cases, a reasonable premium for that. Same on, having a dedicated subcontractor base.
Yeah.
So again, having strategic teams that you can replicate success with, I think is something we're going to continue to see.
Yeah,
right?
We've been seeing subcontractors grow at the ones that really are partnered, growing at a substantial rate within the industry, and starting to become names on their own from just doing the subcontracting work.
That's right. Yeah, no, and I do think, look, as projects get bigger, you're going to need to have, again, first of all, the risk allocation that I talked about, but that partnership, because there are going to, and we see it even around liquidity. And you think about things like mobilization payments. What we're starting to see, I didn't see that as much 5 and 6 years ago. Now, for these subcontractors with these large contracts, they're going to need a mobilization payment. They can execute around the project, but they can't be expected to finance it, for example, right? That's definitely something.
Yeah, the risk is too high with the way things are going.
That's exactly right.
We're seeing all the same things. It's really great to talk to you about this. One thing that we have a lot of construction companies that listen to this podcast, and originally called by Brick. We don't often get to sit down with someone that's a leader expert like yourself. So if we think about the next 24 months, both from a Marsh perspective and construction, we talked a little bit about the finance risks, those kind of things. But what are the biggest risks that you think of? Financial, is AI a thing? Where are you guys trying to lead people, and where do you think it's going to change dramatically in the next 2 years?
First of all, I do think you need to be able to depict that you've got the resources, both financial and people, to execute around the projects.
So you're seeing more due diligence in that area?
We're definitely seeing more diligence. You talk about the financial side, the surety side, for example, which is a big part of construction. Understanding what your bandwidth and what your backlog is to complete those projects are important. So increasingly, that's going to be a piece of it as we think about what risks we're going to need to continue to think about is where can we buy insurance? I would say the insurance market overall is pretty robust. So it has performed well. We're starting to see gradual slowdowns around, premium increases, whether that's excess, the builder's risk market, the property market. So the limits, I think we're less concerned about on an overall basis. There can be some pressure around certain projects where you need larger limits, but probably over the next 18 to 24 months, I do think you're going to need to show why your project stands out and what sort of safeguards you're making whether that's water detection, whether that's cameras, on-site monitoring. Those types of preventative measures, I think, will be great, and how you're trying to, work around keeping workers safe as well.
It feels like the construction industry is moving past just the build and into the operation, maintaining of the facility, and having sort of a living project, so to speak.
100%. And I do think you talk about the life cycle of construction, right? I met with one of our clients yesterday. So they want to be in the business, obviously constructing something, but then the operations and maintenance of those structures going forward as well.
Thank you very much. Risky or too risky? Let's play a game. You
okay.
Ready? All right.
All right.
This one is a little bit nerdy. We're going to do it though. Did you invest in cryptocurrency?
I have not. I don't know enough.
So it was too risky for you?
It's too risky. I'm not going to invest in something I don't know much about.
Yeah, not calculated, not measured.
I just don't understand it.
Neither do I. If you're at 16 in blackjack, do you hit or do you stay?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't play cards at all, but I would say, I know on 17, a soft 17, you're supposed to hit. A 16, I guess I would hit.
Okay.
But that's probably why I'm not going to make a career.
No, that's the right answer. That's the right answer.
You're a blackjack player?
A little bit.
Okay.
I'm convinced that I could become a professional blackjack player.
Okay.
So
very good.
Yeah.
I'm convinced I could not become a professional.
I'll teach you.
Okay, very good.
Next, when one of these rims is in Vegas, we'll go. Using a power tool without the instruction manual, risky or too risky?
It is risky. It depends the power tool. There are plenty of power tools I would use without reading the instruction manual, but anything that could cause loss of limb, I think I would want to read the instruction manual.
What's the latest piece of technology that you put in your life that has helped you?
Apple Watch, thing's been buzzing this whole thing.
Is it annoying or do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it, but I'm trying to think if that's the latest piece of technology. I do have a Remarkable. To take notes. I've been using that recently.
That helped a lot, right?
That has been a nice piece of technology. How about you?
I got the Kindle that you can take notes on while you read books, because I have a problem. I like to take notes in margins, right? So when I made the transition from regular books to digital books, which is it's not a full transition I've been able to make. I need to be able to write it down and retain it, and highlight stuff. And the saving of the bookmarks don't really work for me. But it's a really good device. Closing piece of advice you would give someone entering the industry, someone that's coming to your team for the first time. What's your stock go-to sound advice?
Be willing to learn, ask a lot of questions. The insurance business is a great business. In particular, I love the construction business because you get to see so many different industries. I would say be curious, ask a lot of questions, and if you have an idea on how to do something better, raise it, because we are actively hiring so many young people right out of college. That's our playbook around Marsh, and most definitely around Marsh Construction, because as we're seeing, there are so many different ways to do things, and kind of seeing those different perspectives help us a ton.
How's the curiosity of people coming out of college these days?
Pretty good. I've been massively impressed with the team, and maybe we've been just very fortunate, but we've seen kind of the new ideas, and having people in the office, I think has been important, right? So those are some of the things that I've seen.
Thank you for all your contributions to the built world. It's great talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye.
Great.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to trustlayer.io, and then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.